I just can't quite trust. Oh no, it's good. It's really good. Okay, I feel like vomiting. Is that how you say it in New Zealand? Vomit? Vomiting. I've never done this before, so I am actually incredibly nervous. Hello everyone, I'm Rachel Griffiths, actor, emerging director, try-hard producer, I'm trying really hard and it's hard, and collaborator, giving this keynote today on the topic of collaboration. Firstly, I want to say that I'm very honoured to be here, and I promise not to make any jokes about how stupid New Zealanders are, just because you invited me to give a keynote address. Though I have to say, after the last month of me agonising over this address, I have in fact come to that conclusion. New Zealanders are dumber than Australians because you picked me. Because the achievements of your industry are insane. You punch above your weight commercially, you lead the world in nurturing extraordinary female filmmakers like Jane Campion, Nikki Caro, Gayleen Preston, Christina Jeffs, and Adi Joy, who's my cousin by marriage, and I really like her. And your male filmmakers also don't suck. In fact, I Googled New Zealand filmmakers just to make sure I wasn't, leaving anybody out, and found out that Richard Curtis and Martin Campbell are Kiwis, like seriously new information for me. And you breed cinematographers like rabbits, like really good ones who are taking over the world, and you gave us Russells, so thanks for that too. Actually, I love Russell, so. I have to warn you, this is a first for me, the keynote thing. So in the history of bad Australian exports, you're the guinea pigs and you can call it product dumping. Okay, Playing with Others, 2015. I am not an expert in this, and I will be talking totally not as an expert, like really not. I've had my battles internally with others in this dance that we do. I've been an asshole. I've lost perspective, I've lost trust, I've walked away from bad faith collaborators, but I've also managed to still be working with people that I began this journey with decades ago. So I'm talking to you just as an actor, and as an actor who's spent a fair bit of her life in television, at a very exciting time when these ideas of how do we collaborate or work in different ways to make our shows better are really in play. And that's what we should be thinking about when we are working together. How do we make it better? In the process of that and the product. Of course, I feel so unqualified for this, and I had a big, spaz with my manager going, oh, I don't know why I did this. And being the great manager that he was, he says, no, Rach, no, of course you're qualified. Actors are just intrinsically amazing collaborators. So, the headline, actors are intrinsically amazing collaborators. But our first exercise that we do in drama school is yes. So you sit with someone, and they can ask you anything, like, if you ever wanted to fuck your brother, and you're like, yes. Do you secretly think Hitler was kind of hot? And you're like, yes. But you have to say yes. We're going to do it later, so have a good time with that. The other exercise you do, like day one at drama school, is you have to close your eyes and you just have to fall back and hope that the other clowns that got into drama school with you catch you. Which is, by the way, how we feel on the first day of pretty much every job that we do as actors. You're like, I hope these fucking clowns catch me. And I know we actors have a scary reputation as being kind of difficult and crazy witches of the dark arts. But deep down, I do agree that we are the masters of playing with others. And I'm going to show you a little clip. It really distills, I think, what that means. Could we roll? Oh my God. Thank you, Amy. Yes, 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 I'll do that. And thank you for warming us all up. I'd just like to find out who I'm talking to here, so a little quick show of hands. Who's a director? Oh, okay, that's good. Who's a producer? Writer? Actor? Who put their hand up more than once? Okay. Who didn't put their hand up? Okay, what are you, lost or the press? Or... You're a model. No, it's okay. Like, models are people too. You're welcome. Who here believes that collaboration is the key to realizing their dreams? Who spent more time assembling IKEA furniture than actually thinking about how you can get better at collaboration? Come on, honestly, yeah. So clearly we can all think about this a little bit more. I believe that collaboration is at the core of creativity, and that has never been more true than right now in our business. And I believe that those that get this side of the creative business right are more successful, more resilient, and, well, more creative, and have more friends to share their success with as well, than those that want the toys but can't figure out how to share them. Now, I promise I'm going to focus on the positive with this keynote and hopefully generate some takeaway points, because when I Googled what the fuck on the keynote, it said takeaway points. So I'm taking that on as part of my job description. I also have to confess that I just made up the title of this keynote because Lucy needed to print the program. When I started to look into what I'd actually said, I realized I was hopelessly unqualified for the digital part of it. So what I suggest we do is I'm going to look at the first part of Playing with Others 2015. And later in the forum, I thought it could be fun to really drill into the digital disruption revolution and explore if these core testaments of collaborative faith that I'm proposing, are really changing in this brave new world that we're going into. My friend Richard Keddy, the producer of a great new Australian kids movie called Oddball, said to me this week, "As a producer, I'm only as good as the team I have. It's a team game. Filmmaking is the most collaborative business. And the more you look at the process, the more you will open up creatively." And I would say TV, where I've spent a significant part of my career, is even more so because the demands of 8 or 13 or 22 episodes with very tight pre-production and very long shoots mean that no one can really pretend to be driving the train alone. And coming from a community theatre background, I'm pretty suspicious of the supreme auteur model of creativity anyway. Television was recently described by a successful showrunner as piss soup. It's what's left when everyone has pissed in it. And I think that might be true at its worst, but at its best, it's bigger than its sum of parts. It's a popular culture martini that takes the best ideas in the zeitgeist and the room, and through the distillation of key creative and co-creatives, makes a new, perfectly balanced martini that we just can't drink enough of. Like, we just binge on the good stuff. And in TV, key creatives are very dependent on each other, particularly writers who are encouraged to be both competitive and collegial. Showrunners lean on cinematographers to protect the look of the show through different directors. And editors are also so critical in maintaining the pace and the tone of a show over time. And we all lean on our first ADs in every way. Comedy has traditionally been even more collaborative than drama, I think, and a whole lot more open. It's a lot less siloed. I learned that word last week. And it's innovative in its process. Comedy's always known that 10 writers in a room are funnier than one, and that you need actors to make jokes even funnier, to build that magic with an audience. So there has to be a space in comedy where actors, comedians can overlay their funny and put a pretty distinct imprint on it. There's also an understanding in making comedy that you can't get too tense when you're making funny. Comedy rehearses, drama often doesn't. There's a lot of innovation happening in comedy at the moment, and I don't know if it's because it can be done cheaply, but groups of actors and writers and stand-up comedians are making their own content. My friend Jason from a great production company in Melbourne called Guilty told me there used to always be an intermediary between you and the audience, and agencies, studios, broadcasters, newspapers, distributors, sales agents, and they didn't always know what you were reaching for. But now you can access that audience and prove that an idea works, that a concept works. And with crowdsourcing, you can even take it to production onto another platform. You can test an idea and find out maybe it doesn't really have an audience. But you found that out for yourself rather than the idea being killed because someone else has told you that they don't think it's going to have an audience. And the webisode is bringing a lot of talent and innovation into mainstream. Right now, the other thing that's really changing the process of collaborating in television is that networks like Amazon, who knew like 2 years ago that would be like networks like Amazon, and Netflix are doing guarantee orders. They're ordering a full season, which means the scripts can be written before production. And that gives everybody time to test those ideas and fold feedback. For those of you that don't know, traditionally, you did a pilot that you didn't find out until the upfronts that you were picked up, and then it was all scramble on for getting the writers' room together, and it often meant that scripts came in very, very late. Jane Campion told me recently she had a reading of all of the top of the lake scripts, and that some substantial changes came out of it, that testing and that listening. The full TV order is revolutionizing the medium, and the biggest part, I think, of that that's making it so much better is that everybody knows what they're making before they start making it. No one's in the dark, and I think a greater clarity of vision is so critical in collaboration. We'll be talking a lot about a common vision, finding that common vision. True Detective. As we ponder True Detective Season 2 without first season director Cary Fukunaga and cinematographer Adam Akapour, or indeed without The Reconnaissance and Harrelson Brofest, the question of can the auteurs steal television is on the table in a serious way. And I think this is a setback for fruitful collaboration and stinks of this nostalgia for the lone artist myth, you know, the singular visionary, Michelangelo on his back painting the Sistine Chapel all by himself, having to take notes from the dumb and egomaniacidal Pope. My husband is a painter, and he'll be the first to say there were hundreds of assistants in that room. Rumours of a power struggle, I'm going to get all gossy here, between Pizzolatto and Fukunaga, who directed all 8 episodes of the first season, have circulated since production got underway and grew intense when Fukunaga didn't sign on for season 2. Now, Pizzolatto, by unchaining season 2 from the key season 1 collaborators, is pioneering a new model of television. And it says to the audience, there's only one star here. There's only one true voice, me, the author. I am the continuing thread. I am True Detective. I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, these two guys had like 100 million reasons to keep, you know, to work out their stuff, you know, because out of the, you know, alchemic ingredients, which often makes lead, sometimes makes shit, they had gold. I mean, they really cooked up the good stuff, not the poison. And during my Googling over the failure of this collaboration, I was really obsessed with it. Despite finding lots of, we worked together just fine, or our collaboration was normal, healthy disagreement, there was absolutely a lack of love and a lack of appreciation expressed. Nowhere on the internet will you find Fukunaga saying, my images would have just been spooky posters without the genius of Pizzolatto's words. And nowhere does Pizzolatto say, Fukunaga was absolutely able to give form to the metaphysical ideas in the screenplay and bring these two actors to the height of their career. Niente, nothing, nada. No one clearly loves anyone, or can get over the other enough to pass on some credit. Fukunaga doesn't even refer to Pizzolatto. Like, absolute ghosting. If you don't know it, Google it, because Charlize did it to Sean, and it's the new thing. You go. Ghosting. Clearly, something really great came out of the tension between these two that was brilliant. But sadly, for us, unsustainable. I think the lessons there are really interesting because success clearly does not protect us from failure of process. And what we do is actually 90% process, 10% product, I think. And I think as creative people, we need to differentiate failure of process with failure of product so that we can figure out what works, why does it work, and how can we get better at it. And I want to contrast the Pizzolotto ghosting with this beautiful tribute I read from Peter Jackson after Andrew Lesnie's death. And it really struck me as such a beautiful love letter to collaboration. This is Peter Jackson. I heard he's a Kiwi, is that right? He's from New Zealand. Yeah. Being an only child, I grew up wondering what it would be like to have a brother. It wasn't until today, and trying to deal with the terrible news of Andrew's passing, that I came to realize how much he had become that person for me, someone I could intrinsically love and trust, which I know now means someone who's up for all the good and the bad. Andrew was an irreplaceable part of my family, and I'm in total disbelief that I'll never again hear his infectious laugh, nor benefit from his quiet wisdom, or enjoy his generous praise. Andrew created unforgettable, beautiful images on screen, and he did this time and time again because he only ever served what he believed in. He was his own artist, separate from me, but always working generously to make what we were trying to create together better. I believe the most enduring creative partnerships are fueled by the themes he expresses here. Generous praise, working generously, infectious laughter, brotherhood. You probably just say like brohood here, do you? Up for the good and bad. And that key word, trust. Now you can make your own judgment on season 2 True Detective. But for me, I felt like I was in the band bus with these amazing artists at the end of season 1, and then they all got off, and the bus driver took that bus to a town I didn't really want to have dinner in. I was sad. Something was absent. I definitely missed Adam Akpor's cinematography and that visual link across landscapes. New modes. I'm all for exploring new modes of production, new ways of making television, new processes of making television better. I'm a massive fan of Ryan Murphy, who created Nip Tuck, and Brad Falchuk, who became his co-creator on Glee and American Horror Story. They just had a new show, Screen Queens, debut massively. I think these guys are a great example of when good collaboration creates great ideas, tests them, supports the volume of their production over time. And it's not surprising, given their fluency with each other, that they have other enduring collaborators. With American Horror Story, they had decided that each season would be a totally different time and place. But they also really loved their stars, and they respected the investment that their audiences had made in them. And so they came up with this ancient solution, an anthological series with a rep cast, which has proven really groundbreaking and wildly successful. And I think it really engages the audience because we always look forward to wondering what Jessica Lange's going to do this time. It was also smart that Michael Goy, the cinematographer, did the first 3 seasons, because I think having that intelligence over the location and landscape jumps, it was really critical to the resilience of the show. I think audiences do want to tune into their favorite show and have it as we remember. And as creatives, we need to remember that our audiences are stakeholders in what we do. Banjo Taylor's theory of collaboration. My son Banjo, who I obviously think is a genius, because I'm going to refer to him for the next 12 pages. I started my investigation of this topic, what makes a healthy collaboration, with my son, because I think kids really get what playing with others and working with others is meant to feel like. Like it's meant to be like play and not too hard work. So I asked my son Banjo, I say, Banj, let's say you've got to choose some people in your class to work on a project. What's your criteria? He's like, what kind of project? Because like maths? Because it was maths, I just picked the Asian kids. And I'm like, well, let's say it's not maths, it's a research project and you can't racially discriminate. Race cannot be a criteria because that's bad and you might get sued. So Banjo's criteria for choosing people on a research/presentation project. 1, someone not as annoying as shit. I don't know where he gets this language from. 2, someone who's easy to talk to. 3, someone who doesn't get too into it and go, like, weird. 4, someone who knows what they're doing. And I thought when he came out with that, like, I do think he's a genius, even if I mean, it was really helpful because these are like 4 basic things that you can be in control of so far as yourself. And I think they're really great keys to choosing our partners. And I'm going to go through these for the rest of the session. And I'm going to ask you to pledge with me to take some of these take-home points. We're going to make them so mantras. So let's start with the first one. Someone not as annoying as shit. Now, note he doesn't say the coolest or the hottest or the funniest or the most popular, and he doesn't even rule out annoying. Like, clearly it's okay to be annoying, just not as annoying as shit. You know, and I asked him to compare this to, say, like a baseball team. You know, would he choose someone really as annoying as shit on his baseball team? He's like, well, I mean, they'd have to, like, really guarantee success, like minimum 95% guarantee. It's like the shitbag hedge. And all of the producers I spoke to when researching this agreed that they probably would put up with someone as annoying as shit if they had a 95% guaranteed success, which means they're probably a genius, you know. The problem they all agreed is that there are far fewer geniuses than annoying shits. And most people who think they're geniuses are often just annoying shits. Or assholes. And, you know, although some people like Steve Jobs and like Mark Zuckerberg can be both. Now, clearly we need to define a little bit what that means. Because one person's, you know, disgusting toenail biting is someone else's sexual fetish. So how do we assess, you know, as annoying as shit? And I recounted this dilemma to Tony Ayres, one of the creators of Matchbox, who have like 6 international shows in production out of Melbourne at the moment. And he said that Matchbox was built on the manifesto, never hire anyone you don't want to have dinner with. Now, that doesn't have to mean like nice. Like, who wouldn't want to have dinner with Tarantino? He's got to be a little bit annoying. You know, or Alfred Hitchcock, who everyone says was an asshole. Or Billy Wilder, who said, a director must be a policeman, a midwife, a psychoanalyst, a sycophant, and a bastard. I just love that list. You should write it down, the directors. You know, perhaps it's worth asking your key collaborators what drives them crazy. A producer was expressing to me recently his frustration that none of his directors that he has ever worked with have ever asked to see a budget breakdown. And it really kind of struck me I guess for him it's like being in a relationship where the wife just wants to keep on spending and she's not like relating the bags in her closet to his thinning hair. You know, and he's just clearly left at the end of this 20 years doing what he's feeling abused. And I think creative producers are often annoyed by the lack of respect paid to both their history of thinking about a project and also the clarity they have in grasping the vision of the project and corralling that common vision across departments and budgets and distributors and financiers. And they see themselves very much as a partner in the compromises that must be made, and that they're critical to assessing which compromises actually kill the vision. Because compromise is our constant and faithful companion. I think creators are often annoyed by non-creative producers failing to grasp the key vision of a project and to talk in those terms. I find equally annoying and stupid, because it fails to engage us in solutions, the infantilizing of creatives by money. You know, I always find it helpful if the limitations are described to me. You know, Rach, we've only got one shot at this. I really need you to hit your mark because that sun has like 2 minutes left in it. Or Rach, we lose the kids at 3, but this is the only day we can have this location. Can you see a way of making this work? In this area of problem solving between budget and goals, I think it's a really important area we need to work on, because just like in a marriage, money is often at the source of conflict. Matchbox works powerfully on the model that the creative producers are the storytellers responsible for these critical allocation of resources, because they have the fluency with all stakeholders to reach that common vision with the resources available. Because an us versus them model of production is adversarial, it's stressful, it's not fun, and it's usually short-lived. I think being as annoying as shit or being an asshole makes the job of collaborating harder for others. So I think we should all take a pledge right now to find out what this means. So I just want you to turn to the person next to you and ask them in a collaborative environment, what's your number one shit? And then I'm just going to get it for you. I'm interested in this. Go on. You've got like 1 minute. I would like to hear from someone who spoke to a writer. Did anyone get what annoys a writer? What did you get there?
Not having her point of view listened to, or somebody that doesn't engage with other people's point of view.
Listening, we're so going to get into that. Very nice. Okay. Did anyone listen to a director's whine about what annoys them? Anyone hear from a director? Who was sitting next to a director? Okay, what did you hear?
One word, no.
They get it all the time? Too much no? Too much no. I love it. You know what? I was going to do that little yes game. Maybe we'll do that. I like that. You're going to like that. Okay. Who was sitting next to a producer who was female? Okay, what did you hear?
I also got no.
Just too much no.
With nothing to further the conversation.
So no's a really big one. Do you secretly think Hitler was kind of cool? See, it's hard. It's hard to say yes sometimes. But I'm going to get into this particular theme, which is the difference between open system and closed system thinkers. And I think it's a really interesting thing that kids really understand, because kids are really good at saying yes. And it goes to Banjo's second criteria for choosing someone on a project: easy to talk to. And I think he means someone who's fluent in the process of negotiation, someone who might even be helpful or better at it than he is, somebody who's lubricating. And I think he means someone who is an open system thinker, someone that says yes. It's like I planted you people. It's like amazing. Now, I've found that the smartest people, the most creative people, are often the most open and collaborative. And the closed system thinkers and the most frustrating collaborators are often inflexible and not articulate defenders of their point of view. Sometimes they're just not as bright. Or sometimes they're really brilliant, but they have Asperger's. And there's a lot of people in our industry with Asperger's. Honestly, I do. So many times I'm like, oh God, I must have Asperger's. Okay. To be an open system thinker, first you have to be a listener. A producer I talked to on this subject says that she looks for someone with confidence, a person who can listen to contradictory opinion and let it get you into a better place. It's a bonus if you can bring to it an intensity, even if you piss each other off and find it hard to concede ground. But in that challenge, your idea goes to a more solid place. It's the vigor and the rigor of interrogating it. And this goes back to this central idea that collaboration is a testing of ideas in the journey to make them better. Not make them more yours, but make them better. Fragile people make that difficult. And the ideas that win often do so on exhaustion or will, but not because they're the best ideas. Now, I think many creative artists are just not that easy to talk to, and I think it really is something that those of us on the some intensity spectrum, we just tunnel in and we're trying to give voice and images to really delicate ideas. And we have to really work hard at putting that into words. And on a crew, we have visual, verbal, auditory, the technical, the intuit, and narrative thinkers. We've got so many different types of intelligence to get any project from conception to its audience. It's really a wonder that we can communicate with it all. And I think the thing that really helps bridge all these types of intelligence is to, one, have a respect for these different ways of thinking. We can't all think the same way because what we need to bring to the project is so different. I mean, editors just think like insanely differently to me. I'm in awe of them, but I don't understand them. But I've a huge amount of respect for how their brains can just cut and arrange and rearrange in their mind. Like, it's mind-blowing. And the second thing that I think really helps bridge our types of intelligence is a sense of common vision. And the first thing is to find out what is the common ground. And most difficult conversations, I think, come from the fact that two people are on very different wavelengths. They're in fact trying to make two different shows. They just don't know it. It's often up to the producer, I think, who I've found is often the most gifted verbal thinker in the room. And it's up to he or she to find that key language for the vision and help that to become the common language. And as each partner comes in, from finances to distributors to actors, that core vision of the project needs to be both held, communicated, and then fleshed out. And I found there's really not enough engagement from top to bottom and sideways in our making of this notion of a common vision. And I was speaking at drinks last night about how often we creatives just intuit. We trust that we're on the same page. But the corporate world would never work that way. You know, team building and leadership camps, you know, and all this other stuff the corporate sector and even sporting teams do, you know, as they climb Kokoda in their budgie smugglers. You know, but I do think they've got something to offer us, because what the corporate sector and sporting teams know is that if everybody understands the goal of what is being made, then likely we'll all be more inspired to give 100% to it and will contribute more effectively. What if we can't find the common ground? What if it's just not working? Well, sometimes I think the best answer is just to break up, you know, or threaten to. I think it's really okay at some point, you know, to walk away. I say do it clean, do it early. If you get that sense that common ground will not be found or common values of collaboration cannot be realized. There's this great story with Johnny Depp where, you know, he'd gotten Pirates of the Caribbean and it was just a ride. Like, that's what it was a ride. I'm like, let's turn that right into a movie. So he really doesn't, you know, he goes full in. I'm going to be the most amazing pirate, and he comes up with his pirate, and based on the Rolling Stones guy, and he's arguably drunk, he may be gay, we don't know, but it's beautiful, and it's not what any pirate's been on film before, and it's, I think, this incredible incarnation. And I think the studio was probably expecting like Errol Flynn or something. And the head of the studio saw the first day rushes and like freaked out, rang his agent, said, "What the hell, what's Johnny doing? Is he gay? Is he drunk? This is a kid's film. You gotta pull him in. You can't have this gay drunk doll in the Disney store." And And Johnny just apparently just said to his agent, he said, well, just tell him to shut up or fire me. Because he understood, it's not that he wasn't a collaborator, but he knew that those studio notes came from fear, but that he was working within a common vision of the project, and that his process is based on risk. And that could have literally been the worst movie ever made, like a pirate movie based on a ride. Now, I loved it. I loved the performance. My kids love it, and I'm still watching them like 5 later. But it was in his absolute trust and faith in himself in that moment. It's just like, we could argue, we could go on, or you could just fire me. So there's a lot of strength in that. It's not me, it's you. It can't always be the other person, though sometimes it really is the other person. And the trick is knowing when to walk away from the lazy tool bag or from the psychopathic narcissist who will suck you dry, take all the credit, and eat your children. Helen Mirren said recently, when asked what advice she would give her younger self, she replied, I'd say fuck off more often. Love that. It was very surprising to me. But clearly she spent too much energy looking back, trying to make it work. And there are bad divorces, but there's also conscious uncoupling. So I think we should feel all right about conscious uncoupling. Walking away is a really important part of collaboration. And it should be done if talking it out just hasn't worked, or if the project isn't worth the pain, or if we discover we have irreconcilable goals to our fellow playmates, or just a difference in core values, a difference in our essential humanity, like on Top Gear. So let's make a pledge. Let's make a pledge now, because I keep forgetting these little bits. I'm going to make a pledge. I want you to hold hands. Yes, you have to say yes. That's what this is about. Hold hands, okay? Hold hands. You close your eyes. We're going to get all happy clappy, okay? You don't have to look. Just close your eyes. Hear my voice. All right. All right. I commit to try to become easier to talk to and say yes more often and feel better about breaking up if it doesn't work out. Oh, yes. Doesn't that feel good? Okay. Okay, what if it's not breakup time? You know, what if it's just really tense? And you want to stay together because you think the project's worth it? It's like sometimes, put up your hands if you're married. Have you been married? Put up your hands if you've been married. Okay. Well, it's like sometimes you need to remember the mercy fuck. You know, when you don't feel like it and you're tired and you're overwhelmed with all the multitasking and the ironing and you're pissed off over some lingering thing about the car insurance. But you know it's going to let the pressure off, right? It's going to reset the both of you. And I do wonder if the relationship broke down between Lennon and McCartney and Fukunaga and Pizzoletto because no one would take it on the chin and just do the mercy fuck thing. Now, I didn't even know what a platonic collaborative mercy fuck might look like, but I think publicly crediting your collaborator would go a long way. You know, at the Emmys, True Detective Season 1, Fukunaga didn't even thank Pizzoletto in his Best Directing acceptance speech. Ghosted. Now, David, a writer friend of mine, believes that the collaborative mercy fuck is really just transcending your ego. It's knowing when to concede. And then he added, if it's something you don't care too much about. Tim White, who's a Kiwi producer, and I'm using his name to tell you that I know a Kiwi. I interviewed him for this as well, and he said something I learned relatively young was fighting that sense of, oh my God, my idea is better, and fighting it for longer than was useful, and getting irritated if it wasn't being embraced. Maturity, he says, taught me to go, I don't really care that there's no smell of me left on this project. I just care that it's really good. This idea of checking egos at the door is a theme I've heard again and again as I've been talking to people I respect in the last few weeks. And I'm sure it's true of all human relationships. There has to be respect for all opinions and a clear ability to choose the best according to the shared vision of the project. Taste and judgment. Understanding who gets to make the ultimate call is critical, and it needs to be clear. We're going to do one more little pledge. You don't have to hold hands on this one, because I've warmed you up. I'm going to make a commitment to accept the best solutions, even if they're not mine, or come from the intern. Okay. Now moving on to banjo criteria 3. His third criteria for choosing a perfect team for his project/presentation is someone who doesn't get too into it and make it too big of a deal and go like weird. Now, I love this answer because in the end it's right. It's just a film or a TV show or a webisode or a scatological viral marketing movie. And no one needs to be shamed or belittled or go to bed feeling like you've been, dot, whatever, fill that in. Now, I'm sure this idea that we shouldn't get too into it might be a confronting proposition because we all know how much drive it takes, how much passion one needs to fuel the fire to get anything off the ground. I mean, it's really hard. You need an absolutely, messianic vision in a pitch room to breathe life into a story, to make it live in the minds of others. But when playing with those that you're actually going to make it with you, messianic fire is not always helpful. Now with banjo, I think what he means is taking the Tootsie out of it. You know in that scene in Tootsie where Dustin Hoffman gets fired for standing up for his idea of being a tomato? And he says the tomato wouldn't sit. I'm just so ashamed at how few people in this room have watched Tootsie. All right, anyone under 30, you've got to pledge right now, you're going to go home and watch Tootsie. Anyway, this commercial runs half a day late because Dustin's defending his vision of the truthiness of tomato-ness. And later with his agent's like, no one will hire you. He's like, I bust my ass doing that show. It's like, yeah, but do you have to bust everyone else's ass too? We've all known these people and maybe been these people who hang on to their vision so tightly and you can't see in certain contexts that there's room for another idea. It's just a fucking movie. And I wonder if you need to fake a little bit of, it's just a play date, You're like in the sandbox and you're like, oh, that's cool, Digger. Can I use it after you? Being all cool. I worked with Jill Soloway on 6 Feet Under. She was a writer, came in season 3. She has Transparent now. Put your hand up if you've seen Transparent. Insanely brilliant show. She writes with her sister based on the true story of her dad coming out at 65 as transgender. Jill had done Chicago theatre and a very famous essay that had been passed around Hollywood called Courtney Cox's Asshole. And that got her the 6 Feet Under gig. And Jill came in 3rd season and she was the new girl and I was like, this is so fucked and Brenda, blah, blah, and don't you think the season's getting too dark, blah, blah, blah. And she'd be all slouchy and she's like, yeah, no, I think it's cool, I think it'll be fine. And it's not that she didn't care about the issues. She was a really thoughtful person and she was exploring ideas about girlhood in a time when it wasn't really cool. It was before Girls, the show, and when feminist was still like a dirty word because Tay-Tay and Beyonce hadn't resurrected it. I love them for it. I'm not getting dark on either of them. Like, I don't want to start a war with those girls because that goes bad real quick. Tay-Tay's like, is the like feminist hero of our household for my girls. But Jill was not attached to the outcome in a way I just found so illuminating, because I thought you had to show how passionate you were about your point of view. But she was playing the long game, and she wrote some of the best scripts, and she was really instrumental in moving the younger female characters forward. But she was also really grateful that Alan had given her this shot, and she wasn't going to whine or bitch or talk it down. And compared to some of the writers on that show, she was relaxed on set. She wouldn't give us notes about where the comma was, And she celebrated us, when some unexpected moment of magic happened. And it felt she was there with us, and she appreciated what we were bringing. She was sharing her toys, and it felt good. And she's gone on to become an incredible director. I think letting go, this idea of letting go, is really critical to enduring partnerships. And before 6 Feet Under, Alan just won the Oscar for American Beauty, and it was unheard of anyone to go from winning Best Original Screenplay and then saying, now I want to do television. Like, just people thought he had lost his mind. He had no reason to be sharing a writer's room. But Alan Ball nurtured this amazing stable of unique and strong voices, many of whom had very little TV experience. The writer's room grew people like Nancy Oliver, who wrote Lars and the Real Girl, Craig Wright, who went on to do Dirty Sexy Money. Anyway, he gave them room to find their voices and allowed the show to grow beyond him, though it was always him. And the thing is, no one really wrote like Alan. I mean, even the good episodes would look solid next to an Alan Ball episode. The characters just seemed more alive, the dialogue was funnier and more outrageously original, and I'm sure deep down Alan must have known that, but he also knew that he couldn't write at all, or he didn't want to, because the production schedule's too much for one person. And the price of his own imagination was, is the furnace of our creativity. He maybe said, this show's a tiny little bit less absolutely fucking insanely good, and that's okay. But his writers got better, and they were empowered, and over time it became clear that in this new age of this amazing 5- and 7-act megaform that was premium cable, that these little imperfections didn't matter. The odd Blair episode ironed out. And what matters was how we all grew together and sustained each other over time. And I think the other thing Banjo is trying to express with his not go all weird thing is to stay human. And I've worked with some amazing directors who are just very normal, lovely people. Grace Under Pressure. John Lee Hancock, Rob Connolly, he exploits you with niceness. And there's something about how relaxed, how human these leaders stay. And it's a quality I think that's really underestimated. People work hard for them because they don't want to let them down, not because they're scared of them. I think we can all use a bit of this. I'm not sure how to get better at it, but I want to take a pledge to try. All right, let's take a pledge. Hands up. This one I'm going to close our eyes again because this is a really big one. Close your eyes. I pledge to try to stay human, and vulnerable, and open, under pressure. Banjo's final criteria for collaboration: someone who can do the job. I'm almost done here. Someone who knows what they're doing and is not a complete idiot. And that's key. Someone who you believe can do the job. On 6 Feet Under, there was this one writer I thought was incredible that got fired, and I was really sad. And I said to the producers, that sucks. That writer was really talented. And the producer took me inside and said, no, actually they stank. It was just Alan had to rewrite everything they'd done and didn't get his name on it, and he wanted to hire someone who could do the job. It was really an interesting moment for me. I think we do have to be brave, though, and not be risk-adverse. Tarantino was the video clerk before Reservoir Dogs. And if all you needed to make a great show or film was to find the most experienced people and put them together, then we'd all be gazillionaires and never stop watching television because it'd be so brilliant. We'd never even eat. We'd all die from just watching such brilliant television. The truth is, sometimes you hire the person you hope can do the job. I want to tell you this one last story, and then I'm winding it up. It's a really important one, though. In fact, I think it's the most critical because it speaks to the core of making our industry and therefore the stories we tell more diverse. And I think that diversity is critical for the health of our industry. Risks are exciting, and I admire producers who take them. God, my first film was Muriel's Wedding. I had no track record of being able to do the job, but somewhere PJ believed I could. He saw something and he took a risk. In 6 Feet Under, Alan kind of pioneered this thing where a lot of indie directors came in who had only done maybe one super low budget movie. And this was a really radical idea because up until this time, TV directors were very much part of a production line that goes back to the Ford motor car. Pilots get picked up late, writers' room scrambling to do scripts, directors are often working without a script in bam, you're on, make your day, you better have a director who can grasp the material, problem solve quickly and deliver all the necessary material to the editing room to make the show later. And because of that need for that reliable, can't break down track record, there were pretty serious diversity issues in who was getting to make the product, the key cultural product that was growing Western minds. The dominant form of entertainment. There were few black or Latino, few gay voices, and very few women. And the two Allens clearly wanted their show to absorb the originality and different voices that a new wave of indie filmmakers had, points of view that were edgy, engaging, and outside the mainstream. So these directors came in, like Michael Cuesta, who later set up Homeland, Michael Engler, Nicole Holofner, Miguel Arteta, and Lisa Cholodenko. Now, to be honest, they weren't always great to work with because as an actor, and an experienced actor, we like to feel we're in safe hands, and I get scared when a director can't figure out where to put a camera quickly. So it just felt safer with Alan Taylor and John Patterson, Jim McBride, Dan Attias, these big old-school TV directors, because they'd come in and they'd make the day easier. The first, these new first-timers, they'd come around, wandering around the studio just going, what's that? And you're like, that's a jib arm. And then they're like staring into like a massive light and they're like, wow. And you're like, yeah, it's a 10K. Yeah, I know, it's hot. And I'm pretty sure their eps were much more painful in post because their coverage was a little patchier. But they actually kept bringing these colors and twists to the work. And maybe they fought a little harder for a point of view than the journeyman TV directors, though experienced TV directors will categorically argue this point. But I think they were part of this thing of figuring out what an auteur director can bring to television and what had been so dominantly a writer's medium. How can the show still be the show with a range of really distinct voices? I absolutely believe that directors rising to producer level has made television better. J.J. Abrams and the Game of Thrones directors, Jill Soloway on Transparent. And for any directors here, I'd really encourage you to think about what and how you can bring your worldview to an established medium and go home and say, I made it more distinct. And it's okay that it's not all mine. It's not pure, unadulterated me. But that doesn't mean that it's not as good. It might even be better. Because I really challenged this auteur thing. Sitting with Jane Campion recently, whose voice is so unique and amazing, and to me represents the purest shot of auteurness. But there she is, she's writing with someone, sharing the directing, taking notes from multiple networks, and telling me how fun and cool her collaborators are. And the danger of the auteur thing is you think everyone upstairs is out to fuck you and everyone downstairs is stupid and actors just want to undermine you and get bigger trailers. And if you want to work like that, I say grab yourself a diorama and a bunch of Barbies, lock the door, and just do all the voices yourself for 8 weeks. Because it's a really sad place to create from. And you'll embattle yourself, and you'll become like as annoying as shit and hard to talk to, and you'll go all weird, and Banjo will not pick you for his next project. Unless it's maths and you're Asian.